So Usefulcharts made a very useful video that's got me thinking, and it's titled "Who Would Be Roman Emperor Today?" Very interesting topic. I'm going to show you a picture of Heliogabalus, actually one of the Roman emperors, and basically kind of discussing the topic of who would be Roman emperor today. I actually think every single one of the candidates left out what would be the correct answer. Sorry, useful charts. I actually think if we're gonna choose right now, it'd be the Pope. And here's why. They actually have the same office, Pontifex Maximus. And basically, that was the title of the emperors. And it kind of diverged and became two separate entities, offices, titles, whatever you want to call it. But essentially, they were the same thing. And the Pope would often, whether in good faith or whether out of fear, whatever it was, would appoint the emperor, especially in late antiquity. I don't think the Romanovs ever controlled part of the empire, whatever was any part of the Roman Empire. I think that takes them out. I don't think the Ottomans have a claim. They weren't Roman in any other way, much like Useful Chart said, not legally. Complete follow different language system, everything. And I think that hurts the Byzantines too. They were Greek. And after Justinian, who's the last Roman emperor to me, the Byzantines spoke Greek later on, maybe like 700s, 800s. But to me, even more than the Byzantines, Charlemagne was a Roman emperor. He was crowned a Roman emperor by the Pope in 800. That has value in it. Being crowned a Roman emperor it by the Pope, that's actually the closest thing to the old Roman emperors, the old Western Roman emperors. No one else on that options, not the Habsburgs, not the Romanovs, not the Paleologan Byzantines, not the Ottomans or the Osmans, not even the kings of Spain were ever crowned by a Pope as a Roman emperor. And I think there is something to that. If we're going to talk being appointed by the Pope, Charlemagne definitely was. And this is part of the reason I didn't like this. Love the video, but it's hard to compare from different time eras. Charlemagne was crowned so far back, 800. There was actually a gentleman after him that was crowned, and that was Napoleon in the 1800s. What I often like to say is John F. Kennedy was the prime minister in his time, but who is prime minister right now? It's Trump. Who has executive powers at this moment? It's Trump. All the other presidents came before. They were presidents in their time, but their recency has a value. Is basically the bottom line point I'm trying to drive home. So we're talking recency. Napoleon beats out Charlemagne, and he beats out a lot of these because he's the most recent guy to be appointed an emperor by a pope. Useful Charts has a couple other points. Romans could care less about what barbarians or other countries thought about them. They could care less about bloodlines. They could care less about anything that anything but the most deserving candidate would be, don't know really how to phrase it or articulate it, but basically, by might or by right, that's how Roman emperors often kind of got appointed to the office. Most of them took it. If you look at Constantine, he was in a four-way war. Four guys in his time were calling themselves Roman emperors, and that wasn't the first time. I think Septimius Severus went through something like that. There was a year of four emperors. There was many times it was up for grabs, and it was the general that had the control of most of the legions that would actually take the title. And I think the most appropriate answer right now, the video that Useful Charts labeled was today, it's the Pope. If you're even talking the legal argument, he's Pontifex Maximus. Um, Julius Caesar actually had a very had a saying, I'd rather be first in Hispania than second in Rome. And the funny thing is, the king of Spain, he's not even first in Hispania. He's not even the second. He's kind of a figurehead monarch. Spain actually has its own, I guess, president, prime minister. I'm not really sure, but I have him here. It is Pedro Sanchez, and I think Pedro would be the first in Spain. So how could you be Roman emperor if you're not even the leader of your country? That is not very Roman at all. The Romans would never settle for a weak man as emperor. More on Pedro in a second, because I think he has a claim. But here is a map of the Roman Empire. Roman Empire. Not as at its extent, but kind of generally a territory that was ruled over a long time. And if we're going to look at this, we're going to choose a leader today. I'm going to go with, again, the Pope in Rome, but for a thought experiment reason, he's kind of a religious leader now. Let's say he has to appoint someone in today's day and age. Um, I would have to say we'd have to look at Western Europe. I would actually give the Byzantines a claim, and the Byzantines and the Orthodox Church have their own leader. I don't know what it's called, much like a pope. But if we're talking about any of this territory, I think North Africa gets taken out. They're not in the mix. I think you have to be a Roman Catholic, and that's why Eastern Europe gets taken out. Orthodox, even if we do consider the former Orthodox or the former Byzantine Empire territories, I think the most strong country you'd actually have is probably Greece. It could be wrong. Like if we're going off of like GDP and all those factors, I think Turkey, Syria, North Africa, they all got taken out. Um, so you're looking at mostly big economies, big countries. You're looking at Portugal, Spain, France, and Italy. So between these three countries or four countries, I think you have a choice. And if you want to throw in Greece, be my guest. So five countries. But talking about the three largest GDPs, definitely the three more largest military strongest countries out of the three. You got, or out of the five, the three would be Spain, France, and Italy. I don't think Greece and Portugal actually fall into that. I don't think any other country or any other country that's was now exists that was part of the Roman Empire really has a claim or their leader has a claim. And much like Constantine and a lot of Roman emperors had to duke it out with other claimants to the title, I think if you take Pedro Sanchez of Spain, if you take Sergio Mattarella, sorry, I can't pronounce that, of Italy, and obviously Emmanuel Macron of France, that would be your three contenders. They all rule land that was part of the original Roman Empire, and they all are in Roman Catholic countries. They all speak Roman, and they actually hold an office, and not just a figurative office like the King of Spain. They actually hold power, and that actually meant more to the Romans. Just like Usefulcharts said, them actually titles or bloodlines or anything kind of that's just airy fairy. They were very pragmatic. The Romans were pragmatic before anything. They loved the republican democracy early on, but even that they would suspend to appoint a dictator like Cincinnatus when the Romans had enemies at the gates. So they were pragmatic first, and if the Pope had to choose a Roman Catholic candidate today, not factoring Latin America, because Latin America could have some leaders that can really give some of these European guys a run for the money, but that's not part of the original Roman Empire. And Catholic countries or provinces like maybe like a Quebec or something, again, outside the territory of a Roman Empire, the original Roman Empire. Again, factoring in most of the Mediterranean, I think it comes down to Spain, France, and Italy. And I don't know where this goes from here. The Pope would have to appoint one of the three. If they were to duke it out, I would think France wins, to be honest. I think Emmanuel Macron, today, him and the Pope, if you want to consider the two Pontifex Maximuses, because there was two many times, they would be the two Pontifex Maximuses. France has a larger army and GDP than Spain or Italy. I think it wins out. As long as two out of three don't form an alliance, and I'm gonna put that as a rule, they have to fight individually, and they kind of have to fight each other as kind of a a triangle. I think, who knows? That's a very very random thought experiment, but I think if we're going off mostly GDP and military power, it's gonna go to France. So it's gonna go to Emmanuel Macron and the Pope, and I'm saying both of them are Roman Emperor. A Pope officially holds the office. He's Pontifex Maximus. That is the right answer. That is the most correct answer. And I don't think there's actually any two ways about that. I also think the last man before any of these candidates to embody that talked a lot about Napoleon. He was the last man to be crowned emperor, but I think the last minute man that had a vision for the Roman Empire was actually, and again, I'm not condoning fascism, hate this guy, Mussolini. Mussolini was the last guy that, again, Italian, ruled out of Rome, which does have some value. Useful Chart says they could care less who sits in the capital city. I get that, and that's something the Romans might have said when they were being sacked. But Mussolini was Italian. He ruled out of Rome. He had a vision for the Mediterranean to be restored to the Roman Empire. He built a lot. Like the Romans, he built grandiose structures and really, really try to embody Roman, desire for conquest and architecture and kind of just showing that they were the kings of the, or the rulers of the Mediterranean. Um, Obviously, that fell apart. He fell flat on his face, but he's the last man to actually hold that vision, and I think there is something to that too. So I think the last person actually strived for it, and that's one of the knocks on the Spanish claim that Useful Charts has is the Spanish never did anything with it. I think most monarchs would actually kill to call themselves Roman emperors. I don't think after Isabella, I don't think any of the other rulers or even houses of Spain could add it to their title. That could be wrong, but and that's another thing. I don't think you can actually factor out that there was Habsburgs in power in Spain, then there was I think the Bourbons, and then there was different houses. So if the hereditary argument doesn't work for the Romanovs and it doesn't work for the Habsburgs in Austria, why does it work in Spain? We already established that it's not something passed down. The Roman emperors almost never hereditary. If they were, they might have been nephews, but it was almost never father and son. That's the other thing. So why can we just say from 1490 or 14, what was it, 37, whenever the Byzantines gave it to the Spanish, that it was just hereditary all the way to 2019 at the time of this video, when there was even Napoleon in the 1800s that was crowned an emperor after that, who actually embodied it much more than any of the Spanish monarchs. Napoleon conquered Spain too. Again, Napoleon, I talk about him a lot, and I say this going back to one of my original points. There was different Roman emperors at different points in history. And that's what I think everyone has missed. It was Charlemagne at one point. It was Napoleon. And you could even make a case for Mussolini. That one's more debatable. Um, and the most correct answer today is the Pope. Again, legally speaking, I don't think a single soul embodies a Roman emperor. I don't think Macron embodies a Roman emperor. I don't think anyone has a capacity to conquer the Mediterranean. I think that's part of what this is. Um, I think some of the former North African countries that were part of the Roman Empire actually have maybe more of a desire or capacity to carry out that, or maybe have leaders that might embody that more. But again, I don't think they really can be considered. There's not much Roman about them. There's just a lot to this. The part of the reason I think the Roman Empire fell was first and foremost it was a military enterprise, and when it stopped being a military enterprise, it collapsed. The same thing for the Byzantines. That's why I really don't consider the Byzantines hard Romans. They spoke Greek. They really just like I said, Justinian was the last Roman emperor to me. The Paleologans kind of gave the Byzantines a shot in the arm. There was some here and there, some of the Constantines, but the Byzantines were in a steady decline for the last couple hundred years, even the last like 500 years of their empire. And they didn't even have much of an empire after the turn of the last millennium, which was around 1,000, the time of the Crusades. They just had Constantinople up to the Theodosian walls. That's not an empire. I don't think the Byzantines, anything, they were only by name calling themselves Roman emperors. This is all a fun thought experiment. By no means is it serious. The bottom line point I'm trying to drive home is that it was different people at different times. Comparing timelines, not very fair. And if you are, you have to go with recency. And with recency, I think the last person to be crowned Roman emperor or emperor was Napoleon. I think that's the last definitive person you can point to. And I think if you're going to go for today, which is what the video Useful Charts uploaded is about, I think you're gonna have to go with the Pope. And if we're going like with the times of antiquity and the procedures they would have followed, you have to appoint someone. I'm going with Emmanuel Macron. And again, I don't think he embodies Roman Emperor, but this is a thought experiment, and that's the best we have. I'm gonna leave it at that. And peace out, everyone.